Hello everyone! We're doing something different again. It's back to school season, and even if that is a period of your life that is fortunately long past, you know when that time of year comes around. You can feel it in the air, you can sense it when you enter a store, there are ads everywhere, ads on TV, back to school. And even though that's a time that I look back on with mixed feelings, because I didn't mind school, but I definitely didn't want to go back after summer, I do feel a little bit of excitement and nostalgia when I see the school buses going by and think about how fun it was to go shopping for school supplies and getting some new clothes. And while there were things that I dreaded about the first day or two back, and things that I stressed about way more than I should have, because in the grand scheme of things it was not important, there were a couple things that I looked forward to, and one of those was finding out what books we were going to be reading in English class. That is because I was, and still am, a gigantic nerd. English was my favorite subject, and so getting the syllabus and looking over it and seeing what was on the schedule for the year was exciting to me. And in the days before we had syllabi, just going in the classroom and seeing the shelves along the walls with 25 copies of this and 30 copies of that, that was exciting to me. I have found that when you get older, this is something that you can share with other people. Someone mentions a book and you say, "Oh, I read that in school," and they say, "I read it too." And maybe you compare notes on it, maybe you commiserate together on having to read it and all the other things that you had to read that you hated. Or maybe you find that, yeah, I hated it at the time, but in hindsight, it stuck with me. Or I read it again all these years later, and it was actually really good, and I wish I had appreciated it back then. I feel like this is something that most of us have in common. Because of that, I thought it would be interesting to share with all of you what I had to read in school. And I happen to have a list that I compiled several years ago of most, if not all, of the books that were assigned to me, or that I had to choose for summer reading, or that were read to me in class when I was really little. I thought it'd be fun to go through this list together and reflect on what I read and try to remember what I can of each book, and we can compare notes on these things. So here's my list. We're gonna start way back at the beginning. Well, not quite the beginning, because if we read books in kindergarten, I don't remember. In first grade, my teacher read us 3 books that I can remember. 2 of them were by E.B. White, Charlotte's Web and The Trumpet of the Swan, and the third one was by Richard Atwater, Mr. Popper's Penguins. I remember more about the experience of having these books read to me than of the books themselves, although I do remember little scraps here and there. I most remember Charlotte's Web, but I think that's because I saw the film, the cartoon film from the 70s, 80s? I'm not sure. Very sad. I remember us all sitting there on the floor and my teacher reading the books to us. I most remember her reading Mr. Popper's Penguins. I think that one was first, and it was kind of a novelty to me to be sitting there having someone read a chapter book to a whole bunch of kids. I didn't go to public libraries or preschool or anything. I was at home until kindergarten, and that was like a culture shock. I remember that in first grade we had to do a book report, mainly consisting of like 5 sentences saying what the book was, what it was about, and what you thought of it, probably. I don't really remember this, but the book that I chose was a book that we had in our house, A Dog Called Kitty by Bill Wallace. All I remember about the book is that I believe it was the climactic event of the book, the crisis, this really cute dog, I think it was a stray, maybe, was attacked by another animal. And it was vicious, and the description was quite gruesome. And you didn't know if the dog was going to make it. It was pretty disturbing for a 6-7-year-old. Definitely, it was not intended for someone that young. I think it was more for 8 or 9 or possibly even 10. But that was the book that I picked, and I wrote my little book report on it. And one of the crowning achievements of my elementary school career, my book report got featured in a display case in the hall. My second grade teacher also read to us a few books, but I remember 2. One was Sideways Stories from Wayside School by Louis Sacker, which I absolutely enjoyed. I believe when she started reading them to us, I was already familiar with them because we had Wayside Schools Falling Down here at home. I'm not really sure about the order of things here, because somewhere in that period of time, Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger, the 3rd book, came out, and I got that in a book order, or a book sale, something. I owned it, and so I was familiar with all 3 of them, and maybe my teacher read that one as well, I don't know, but I do remember sitting there and listening to her read these wonderfully absurd stories and being familiar with the characters already. So that was really exciting, and I just really enjoyed those stories. The other book I remember her reading to us was Frindle by Andrew Clements. And I don't remember so much about that one. I remember listening to her read it and chewing on Twizzlers, because that was her thing. She gave us all Twizzlers when it was story time. And I don't even like Twizzlers anymore, but I sure ate a lot of them at the time. And I had also discovered how to double knot my shoelaces on my shoes, so I would sit there listening and have a Twizzler hanging out of my mouth and double, triple, quadruple knot my shoes and then undo them and then do it again. Yeah, I still double knot my shoes. We had to do a book report in 2nd grade too, this one a little bit more advanced. I think this one maybe required 3 paragraphs, and the book that I chose was a Babysitter's Club book, Dawn Saves the Planet by Anne M. Martin. Once I read it, I felt like I wish I had picked a different one. There were other Babysitter's Club books that I liked much better. I have 3 of them on my juvenile bookshelf over there. I really liked the spin-off mystery series. Those were really up my alley. I have one where Claudia has a stalker calling her, and then there's one where Christy is on a train and there's some mystery. Those were great. The other ones, they were hit or miss, as far as I'm concerned. No, the Claudia one that I have is a mystery at a museum. That's what it is. I don't know. The stalker phone calls, that's like the 2nd one in the mystery series, I think. Anyway, I did enjoy the Babysitter's Club books pretty well. I certainly read a lot of them, so I must have liked them. And I read a couple of the Babysitter's Little Sister ones too. Those were kind of annoying. But I did have one also set in a museum that had dinosaur skeletons and stuff. That was fun. In 3rd grade, it looks like 4 books that I chose on my own, and then one that we all read together. The one that we all read together was Sarah Plain and Tall by Matricia McLachlan. I think we also read the second book, Skylark? I remember we spent a long time on Sarah Plain and Tall. We also had to do a biography assignment, read a book about a famous historical figure, and then dress up as them and do a book report, an oral report. I always hated oral reports, and I didn't like having to pick a person either, but well, I picked some interesting people through the years, and this time I picked Louis Braille, who, when he was a little boy, he was playing in his dad's tool shop. He had an awl, and it slipped, and he stabbed himself in the eye, lost his eyesight, and eventually invented Braille, the what do you want to call it, the tactile reading system for blind people. That's who I picked to dress up as him. I don't know, I wore like a little sport coat and took a scarf and tied it around. Somebody helped me, my mom or my sister helped me make a little cravat, which was probably not period appropriate, but who cares? I was 8. According to this, we did another biography project, and this time I picked Louisa May Alcott, and I read Invincible Louisa by Cornelia Meigs. I'm not sure if that was 3rd grade or 4th grade, and I'm not sure that I actually did a book report on it. I might have just read that for fun, because this was around the time that I was starting to get into Louisa May Alcott books. That might have been 4th grade. I don't know. They all run together. I also did book reports on 2 ghost stories. One was Stone Words, a ghost story by Pam Conrad. I didn't like it a whole lot. It was strange. For that book report, I had to make one of those mobile things, you know, where you have the hanger, or 2 hangers if you really want to be fancy, and you make little things to represent parts of the story, and you string them up to the hanger. I did quite a few of those, and I hated them. I took the bus to school. You know how hard it is, like, on a windy day, to be waiting for the school bus, and then you wrangle the thing onto the bus, and then you're trying to get to the seat that you want to sit in, hopefully away from everybody else, and the school bus is already moving, so then you're getting jolted around, not safe, and then you're trying to protect the thing, trying to keep your strings from getting all tangled up, and then you get to school, and you have to figure out, like, where do I put this thing? If you were at a point where you were old enough to have a locker, then you're like, well, how do I get it in the locker? And you're just, like, mad at everything and everybody, and you can't wait until you can turn this thing in. And if there was an oral report component to it, that made it even worse, because then you were stressed about that, and you probably didn't sleep well the night before, and you couldn't wait till it was over, and you had butterflies in your stomach, and you felt like, I have to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to go to the bathroom at school because I hated that, and I just did not like them at all. The other ghost story that I read for 3rd grade was called Ghost Horse by Janie Lee Simner. I picked this one because I could say that I had a phase where I was into horses, but no, I was afraid of horses in real life, but I liked books that had horses in them. I read a few books from the Saddle Club series. I read The Black Stallion and struggled my way through Black Beauty, and I read a few of the Black Stallion books, read a few of that other series Or whatever. Was that even a series, or... Well, I can't remember, but a lot of them. Also, Pony Pals. I owned a bunch of those. So I chose Ghost Horse, and for that one, we had to do a diorama. So we had an old shoebox, nice big shoebox, and my mom and my sister, they helped me a lot with this, because I was freaking out. We made like a barn setting with a paddock, and then my sister was into sewing, and she and I had made, well, she really did a lot of the work, a little stuffed bear before this happened, and so this time we made a horse. We drew out the horse pattern, and then I think I sewed it myself, and then turned it inside out and stuffed it with polyfill, and then sewed a mouth and an eyeball on it, and hair. We had a mane out of yarn, and I betcha 50 cents I've still got the thing kicking around here somewhere, because when you put that much effort into a book report, into a project, you don't just throw it away. That's how I feel. You don't get rid of all that blood, sweat, and tears. You don't just toss it in the trash. You say, no, I'm keeping this because I made it. I worked really hard on that. But I'm not going to go through all my stuff to dig it out. Fourth grade was my favorite grade. My fourth grade teacher was my favorite teacher. There are so many reasons why I liked fourth grade. We studied ancient Egypt. We also studied ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Greece and touched on ancient Rome, but ancient Egypt was my jam, because there were books that I read outside of class that were about ancient Egypt, or about people in the present day getting involved with stuff from ancient Egypt, and it was scary. I'm talking about The House on Hackman's Hill, one of the scariest books I've ever read, and The Egypt Game, which wasn't necessarily scary, but was eerie. What else did we study in fourth grade? We studied birds, we studied bats, we studied monarch butterflies, we studied whales, which, not so into those. Not so into ocean things. We studied owls! That was when we studied owl pellets, and I thought it was going to be the most disgusting, disturbing thing, and it was one of my favorite science-y things that I ever did in school. And my fourth grade teacher, she was just so wonderful at, making everything fun. Not math so much, but all the other things. And she would give us these little goodie bags that had special pencils and erasers and little bouncy balls and like little things that we could put together and fly them, and little trinkets, and I loved it. And yes, I still have a lot of that stuff as well. And we watched a lot of movies and tons of episodes of Reading Rainbow and other stuff. That was the best year, and I was so excited because that was the year I turned 10, double digits. Felt like I'm becoming a grown-up, and I was really developing my tastes in what I liked to read. That was the year that I read Pride and Prejudice on my own. I remember that was we were doing standardized testing. And I finished my test, and then under my desk I had Pride and Prejudice, and that was what I read as my break. I'm such a weird kid. How did I have any friends? So in fourth grade, I actually don't have any books marked down here that I read myself. 4 books that were read to me by the teacher, not just to me, but to the whole classroom. 3 of these books were all by the same author, and those are Poppy, Poppy and Rye, and Aerith's Birthday. And those were all written by Avi? I remember nobody was sure how to say the name. There were people who said it AVI, 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 Avi. The fourth book that I remember her reading to us was Time Cat by Lloyd Alexander. I think she read the whole thing. We might not have ended up finishing it, but I finished it on my own. I feel like there must have been more books than that, but those are the ones that I remember. Fifth grade, I was no longer an elementary school student. I was in middle school, and we weren't read to anymore. I have 2 books down for 5th grade, and one is marked as a book report. I chose to read The Wheel on the School by Meindert de Jong. It's a Dutch book, I think. And the other book, which was assigned to us, was From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E. L. Konigsberg, which was a book that I thought was just okay at the time. Years later, just a couple of years ago now, I reread it, and I really enjoyed it. So there's a case of something that I didn't appreciate when I was young, but I definitely see the value in it now. 6th grade was the first time that we had assigned summer reading. Summer reading had been a thing before that, but in elementary school, we were given a page, a chart, and we were supposed to write down any books that we read during the summer and turn it in when the school year started. And I think we were encouraged to read 10 books, and of course, me being me, I was an irritating overachiever, but for 6th grade English class, this was the first time that we were given a list of possible books, and we had to choose 2. And I chose Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie and My Friend Flicka by Mary O'Hara. A horse book, so I was being consistent. We also were assigned Rules of the Road by Joan Bauer, which I remember thinking was an unusual book to assign for 6th graders because the main character was an adult, and her relationships were all with other adult people, and it had to do with driving. And I think the protagonist starts working for an older woman and has to drive her around. Maybe. It was a good book, though. I liked it. I might have been the only person in my class that liked it. We also read 2 World War II/Holocaust related books, Number the Stars by Lois Lowry and The Devil's Arithmetic by Jane Yolen. Those were both rough, especially The Devil's Arithmetic. And we read Iron Man by Chris Crutcher. I didn't like Iron Man. It was a book for boys. It was athletic. Ugh. It probably wasn't really that bad, but it just didn't interest me. Also, in my social studies class, that teacher had a little bookshelf of books that we could read for extra credit. The 2 books that I chose from her collection to read for extra credit were Catherine Called Birdie by Karen Cushman, which I did not like, even though it was humorous and there were other people I knew in class who read it and they liked it, but I didn't like it. And The Bomb by Theodore Taylor. I did like that. That was about atomic bomb testing. It's actually a pretty dreary and depressing book. Anti-war, anti-nuclear bombs. So, pretty heavy stuff for a 6th grader, but 6th grade, they were starting to be pretty lenient. I mean, My Friend Flicka had some surprising things. I learned some terminology reading that book. Woo! 7th grade was a pretty good year. For summer reading, I had to choose 3 books. Well, no. Summer reading, there was one book that we all had to read, and that was Hatchet by Gary Paulson, which I did not like. Although I like survival stories now. So if I were me then, I probably wouldn't mind it that much. But at the time, I wasn't into survival stories, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the kid. Whatever. It was not something I would have picked. But the 2 other books that I read for 7th grade summer reading, chosen from a list, were The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi, AVI. That's definitely not it. Which is about a girl who's on a ship where all of the sailors mutiny against the captain, and she kind of participates in the mutiny and becomes one of the crew. I really liked it. And the other one that I read for 7th grade summer reading was A Night to Remember by Walter Lord, which is nonfiction, the story of the sinking of the Titanic. And I loved it. Have it on my shelf right where? Here. Huh. Ooh, it's dusty. Yes, I think I read this in one day, and I was so excited that I had picked a book for summer reading that I actually loved. I ended up loving both of them. I contend that A Night to Remember is still one of my favorite nonfiction books that I've ever read. And, well, I haven't read a lot of books about the Titanic, but I believe that it's one of the best. During the school year in 7th grade, we all read 3 books together, and one of them was Brian's Winter by Gary Paulson, sequel to Hatchet. That's why we all had to read Hatchet. Also, we read Touching Spirit Bear by Ben Mickelson. Besides the book cover, I remember nothing about that. And we also read The Girl Who Owned a City by O.T. Nelson, which is kind of a post-apocalyptic book where everybody over the age of, all the adults die, and it's just the children left running the world, and this one girl kind of assumes leadership. This was a reread for me because I had already read the book. We probably had it. That was not supposed to seem so snooty. Sorry. My sister had read it either on her own or for school, and then I read it because it looked intriguing, and then we had to read it for school, which was fine because I liked it. I liked it a lot. 8th grade is confusing. Number 1, I don't have anything marked as summer reading, so I don't know if we just didn't do summer reading that year, or I completely forgot. Hey, it's Editing Weaselberry here. Let me just interrupt myself to point out that there's a book I realized after I filmed this that I forgot to include on my list, and that's Tiger Eyes by Judy Blume, which was, not my thing. I know I read it for summer reading, but I can't remember if it was for 7th or 8th grade. That's it. It really bothered me that I left that out. I do have a lot of things marked as book report, though, that any of those could be summer reading. Also, I know there's stuff that we read in class, like we read excerpts from the play version of The Diary of Anne Frank, but I didn't mark that down. I'm not sure if we didn't read the whole thing or what, so there aren't a lot of books here. But that year we had another class that was called, I don't know, Skills or something, and we had to read books for that class as well and write reports on them, which I know made some kids really unhappy. That class was kind of a hodgepodge of things. I don't know what the point was. honestly. But, more books, that's fine. Fine with me. I did not mark which books here were read for English class and which were for this other class. I read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Picked that one myself, did a book report on it, and my teacher wrote on the book report, I love this book. It's a favorite of mine as well. I also read The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Chose that one myself because it was short. The Pearl is a book that all of my siblings have had to read, and it has kind of a reputation in this family, at least. I don't know if it's something that other people talk about, like, ugh, The Pearl, ouch, oh, that hurt, really. It's a downer. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is also a downer, but The Pearl is just... This other class, we read My Side of the Mountain and the sequel On the Far Side of the Mountain, both by Jean Craighead George, and I found this a little bit annoying because just the previous year we'd had to read Hatchet and its sequel, and here we were reading about another kid who ends up out in the wilderness by himself, and I was just kind of like, can't we read something else? But I also chose to read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, which I found rather annoying. I liked Huckleberry Finn better when I had to read that years later. Also, Hans Brinker by Mary Mapes Dodge, which I really liked. That is set in World War II. Germany, Austria, Denmark, Norway. Okay, so that was a disaster. Hans Brinker, or The Silver Skates, was first published in 1865. So, no, it has nothing to do with the Nazis. I got it confused with another book we had in our collection that I read around the same time, Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan, which is a great story about kids outwitting the Nazis in German-occupied Norway, based on a true story, too. It's totally unrelated to Hans Brinker, though, which is set in the Netherlands. What we're really learning here is how porous my memory of these books I read in my childhood can be. Also, this is what I get for not doing some research beforehand. Carry on. Those are both definitely for kids. I also chose Flight Number 116 is Down by Caroline B. Cooney. This was one of my sister's books. My sister had a Caroline B. Cooney phase. She's most known for The Face on the Milk Carton and its sequels, Whatever Happened to Janie, not to be confused with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and The Voice on the Radio. Also, I think there was a time travel romance series. I read a couple of those, didn't get into them. Flight Number 116 is Down. Flight Number 116 is Down is a plane crash book. And that's where I learned all about triage. And I remember nothing else. Oh, there was another one from 8th grade. The 21 Balloons by William Penn DuBois. Also a book like Hans Brinker and Flight Number 116 that we had. So I said, okay, I'll read this for my book report. Okay, this has taken much longer than I anticipated. Finishing up 8th grade, that gets us through middle school, so I guess I will do high school in a part 2. Did not anticipate breaking this up into 2 parts, but okay. So, I hope you enjoyed hearing the books that I read and some of my thoughts on them, what I could remember, in 1st grade through 8th grade. Please share if you read any of these books in school, or if you read other books in school. I'd be very curious to hear. They didn't always assign us all the same things, so yeah, go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I'll see you next time. Don't know if the next video I post will be part 2. Probably not. But look forward to part 2 when I talk about what I had to read in high school. It's a long list. Thanks for watching.